Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in the weekly nonprofit series, People in Fundraising. Today is Tuesday, December 16th, 2025. This is my last interview of the year, and I'm very excited today to welcome one of my favorite Team A co-workers from Harvard Business School, Kate Osterman. Good afternoon, Kate.
Hi, Tim. Good to be here. Flattered to be asked.
My pleasure. Thank you for making time, and I'm so excited to hear your career story and share with our audience your career journey, but also you have a really active and varied volunteer repertoire in your career. And we'll get into what that looks like with various nonprofits as a volunteer leader. Before we get there, Kate, if you can please tell our audience just who you are in your day job and anything else you want to share.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Kate Osterman. I'm a managing director of reunion campaigns at the Harvard College Fund at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I'm a graduate of Miss Porter's School in Farmington, Connecticut, Smith College in Northampton, Mass, and the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where I got my master's. Tim and I worked together at the Harvard Business School, and I've bounced around a little bit since then, because that was like 20 years ago, which is really scary to say out loud.
20.
It's been a minute.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think you were there right when we did those team structures, right? Like broke it out.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I started there in the late summer of 2004. And that 04-05 fiscal year was the year that the team structure was introduced. So I was hired into the planned giving group actually as a staff assistant supporting a woman named Susan Hamilton, who was an amazing mentor and just a fantastic exemplar of a fundraiser. I think, as you know, she's since passed away, which is a real loss for the community in a lot of ways. But I was hired in as her staff assistant, and she was at that point the head of the planned giving group and also the head of all international fundraising at HBS. And so that was my first job at Harvard. Lo, those many moons ago. But I don't look a day over 25, right?
You do not. I'm glad you mentioned Susan Hamilton. Yes, she was an extraordinary fundraiser and a good mentor to so many people. So yeah, nice to be.
If I'm any good at anything, it's because she taught me. So.
So thank you for that intro, Kate. And if you could just tell our audience in a few minutes. I mean, you did it right there. You talked about Susan Hamilton. But how did you even get to Harvard, and how did you feel like, okay, I'm working with Susan in planned giving, and then where it kind of goes from there, please?
Yeah, sure. I always joke that nobody said they wanted to be a fundraiser when they grow up. So, it's not like being a ballerina or a firefighter. I think everybody kind of finds this profession by accident, and I don't think I'm any different in that way. My first fundraising stint was actually while I was still in college. I signed on to be a class agent for my high school. I went to a small girls' boarding school in Connecticut called Miss Porter's, and they needed someone to be their class's fundraising chair. And I if you're tall enough and stand still long enough, eventually you get elected to something. So I agreed to do that. So that was my first job asking people for money. It was actually just asking my classmates to support the Miss Porter School Annual Fund. And then everything is always Miss Porter's fault. So coming out of Smith, I needed a job, and I had a degree in art history and wanting to work in museums. And my, still to this day, best friend from Miss Porter's had worked at the Yale Center for British Art, which is one of the campus art museums at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. And she had left a position and said, hey, you should talk to my old boss from Yale. She just knows everybody in the museum industry. She would have a really good sense of what's going on. And I had a conversation with her. And at the end of it, I was agreeing to drive to New Haven and do a job interview, and ended up working there for 2 years in the education department at the Yale Center for British Art, the largest collection of British art outside the United Kingdom. And I was there for 2 years in the education department, managing the volunteer docent corps, but also working with the student guide program, which was undergraduates at Yale
Mm.
who wanted to do tours of the museums. And while I was there, I realized I did not want to work in museums anymore.
Oh,
Or at least that I didn't want to be a curator, because I didn't want to go get a PhD in art history, because that at that point, the way the PhD programs were moving, not my cup of tea. So I sat down with another graduate of Miss Porter's School, a woman named Constance Cece, is her nickname, Cece Clement, who was the deputy director of the museum at the time. And I
mm.
said, "This is everything about my job that I really, really like, and that I think I might be good at." I was like all of 23 years old. What did I know? But like, I think I'm good at this stuff. People tell me I'm okay at this stuff. This stuff I never want to do again. If I
Mm.
never have to guide a group of third graders through an art museum ever again, I'm good. And I said, "Is this like a job description of like, is this a job you can have without this stuff? Like, does this?" And she said, "How do you feel about asking people for money?" And I said, "Well, I do it for Farmington. I guess no problem." And she goes, "You should work in development." She said,
Ah,
"Do you want to stay here?" And with all due respect for all of our friends at Yale University and other schools in New Haven, I was ready to be done with New Haven after 2 years, and I wanted to move to Boston. And she said, "If you want to work in development and you want to live in Boston, you should probably go work at Harvard. They have a very large development shop." And I said, "Sounds great. Let's do that." And she offered to put my resume in front of her cousin, who at that point was the executive director of development for the Harvard Business School, a woman
oh,
you and I both know named Christine Fairchild, who went on to be the director of alumni relations at Oxford University until her retirement just a few years ago. And Christine Fairchild interviewed me the Friday of 4th of July weekend.
oh, wow. You
So
have
like
great
long
memory.
weekend, right? And the interview was at 4 o'clock. And I was like, this interview is going to be 30 seconds long. This woman is not going to want to talk to me. We sat there for an hour and a half just talking.
Wow.
And I was like, "I'm really sorry. There's clearly many better places that you would like to be right now." And she said, "No, I'm exactly where I want to be. And do you have a copy of your resume?" And I said, "Are you kidding? I've got 12." And she said, "Well, I only need three, and here are the three people I'm going to give it to. They're all hiring right now, and you
Mm.
might be a good fit." And I ended up working for Susan Hamilton and learning a lot about planned giving. Still just enough to be dangerous, not enough to be truly helpful. I never claimed to be a very good planned giving fundraiser. Also learning a lot about the international strategy at HBS at that point, and because she was just an incredibly well-seasoned and amazingly gifted major gifts fundraiser. I just learned a lot about prospect management and fundraising principles and best practices, and really just kind of the nuts and bolts of how to not really be bad at this.
Yeah.
I never claimed to be good at it, but if I'm not bad at it, it's because of Susan. So that's how I ended up in this gig.
Wonderful. I gotta say, if you've got Christine Fairchild in your corner, and then you work with Susan Hamilton, like starting from the gate with two incredible and incredibly generous individuals. Christine was on this podcast about 2 or 3 years ago, and she was still at Oxford at the time, and she was just so great as a guest, and loved reconnecting with her. So I'm glad you
An
mentioned her.
amazing person. But I think that's the thing. I think, and this has to, I've worked in higher education fundraising for my entire professional career. So what do I know? But I have to believe that this is true for other professions as well, that, really good mentors and people who are willing to help guide you are just amazingly important.
Absolutely.
And I've just been really, really lucky that really incredibly capable, incredibly intelligent women have been generous with me over my
Yeah,
career. I've been really lucky in that.
that's fantastic. Thank you for that, Kate.
So if
Um,
you're wondering if you should be a mentor, the answer is yes.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And in a few weeks, I'm airing an interview with two prospect development people in Minnesota who have, through the APRA Minnesota chapter, been a mentor mentee. And
Oh, that's
so it's,
awesome.
yeah, and they talk about just how beneficial that has been for both of them. So
Yeah.
great plug for being a mentor. Um, you mentioned, you're now at Harvard, um, starting out HBS and then a couple of stops since then. That leads
Mhm.
me to my quote here, my second question. And 3 years ago this month, then Harvard University president, Larry Bacow, noted in Harvard Magazine that, quote, being a loving critic of our institutions and our communities requires a great deal from us. Though we need to be respectful of our traditions, we should not be unwilling to depart from them. Similarly, we have to be willing to ask difficult questions, end quote. And I've used this quote from President Bacow a few times. Aaron and Chris Lawler were guests, and I asked them this one at the time too. Given your long tenure, Kate, with Harvard, and this coming from Harvard's president at the time, I'm just curious, with your experience working with alumni and volunteers and donors and prospects, how do you lean in and tend to listen to and reply to those various audiences who are themselves oftentimes loving critics?
It's a good question. And, when I was much younger in these roles, I thought that it was my job to respond. I thought that I was supposed to be answering, that I was supposed to be giving the answer that was going to solve everybody's problems and was going to make everything okay again. And it's really, really hard not to still want to do that.
Sure.
Because if you feel that the institution you're representing is a good one and a sound one, and I would argue that in order to be a halfway decent fundraiser, you ought to probably believe in the thing you're raising money for. So, it can be really hard to not want to just help people understand how what your organization is doing is important and helpful and good. But I've learned that you're not always going to be able to solve the problem, and you're not always going to have an answer that's going to right the wrongs of the universe. And there are a lot of criticisms that people have of organizations that are fair and that are valid, and there is no response other than, you're not wrong.
Right.
So it took me really a long time to realize that the first part of your question is actually the important one, and the second part is honestly like the least important part of it a lot of the time for me, that the response is much less important than the listening, and that the giving people a way to voice their concerns and explain to people why they're upset is incredibly important. And the reality of a lot of organizations, not all, but a lot of organizations, and particularly colleges and universities, is they're very complicated places, and they can be very opaque to anyone who isn't actively part of the institution. And alumni are part of the institution, but they're not getting the all staff email about the snow delay, right? Like they're sort of, a lot of their information is coming from, external media sources or other places, and they're not in the all staff meeting, right? And the listening is really important, in giving people the place to ask the questions and just say, what is happening? I read this thing in the insert news outlet here. What's really happening? Is this true? And I mean, I see this in my volunteer work with Miss Porters. My classmates will call me and say, I heard about this thing. What the heck? What's going on? And, with the hope that I have some sort of insider knowledge that I can share. And, I don't always have the answer, because the answer doesn't always exist.
Right.
And you can't always provide the solution that someone is looking for, because it just might not be there, especially in complex organizations, especially in complex situations, especially in complex times, nationally, globally.
Totally.
You're not always gonna be able to solve the problem. And the other thing that I've realized is that, the first part of President Bacow's statement is important too, that, to be a loving critic. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. Love and hate are two sides of the same coin. They are the same emotion. You cannot be angry with a place if you don't care about it.
Right.
And so you have to be respectful of people caring enough to say something.
Yes.
Sometimes it can come across a little bit more stridently worded than one might wish, but
Right.
I think you have to appreciate that people care enough to want to call you.
That's true.
And you really have to listen to where people are coming from. I mean, oftentimes it comes from a place of fear or hurt or anger or frustration. sometimes it just comes from a place of confusion. I read this article. Can this possibly be true? And it's really nice when you can say, actually, no,
Right.
it's not. I wish someone could get that article pulled down. It's just wrong. Because it can happen. But, you know, we're in a place as a society, nationally, globally, where things are changing and the sands are shifting and the way that we interact with one another and with institutions is different than it has been historically. And, you know, it has to be possible, necessary even, to be respectful of tradition, but embrace innovation and to
Yes.
hold those two things in concert.
Yeah.
And I would argue, particularly in education, whether that's, you know, K through 12, independent schools, colleges, universities, what have you, if you are going to be an educational institution, and if you are going to pursue knowledge as a mission, if your mission is the creation and dissemination of knowledge, you have to hold on to the idea that there will be new information and
Yes.
that that new information is going to necessitate some kind of change. Because if you do not take on new facts and realize that that might necessitate you doing a little bit of internal, you know, introspection and interrogation, you're kind of not doing it right.
I agree.
So, you know, there's always going to have to be change. And weathering it can be challenging, especially when that change is uncomfortable.
Yes.
But
Uncomfortable,
I think we're in
uncomfortable.
bigger trouble if people don't call to yell at us,
Yeah,
because it means then they kind of stopped caring. And that's, I think, even worse.
I
So
agree. Yeah, it gets back to the apathy that you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
I think that's really what we have to be afraid of. Not that
Yeah.
people are mad at us or, you know, that someone is going to call you and say, that decision you made, that policy you changed, I don't care for it. I don't like it. I don't agree with it. Um, they cared enough to call, and that's not nothing. So,
Exactly. I liked your point too about the listening being more important than the response, the reply. And I think you've talked a few times here about, the immediacy, the changing quick pace of change in our society. And I think that trickles down to individuals. And a lot of times there is a feeling that I need to respond right now. And I may not have all of the information and may not even be prepared to articulate what I think I know. And that gets us in trouble too.
yeah.
And a couple of years ago, my boss at Intermountain Healthcare, I was working in this cubicle type structure, and she was coming down the hallway to talk to another vice president at his office. And so they were right in front of my my cubicle, and he asked her a question, and she just very calmly said, "I'm not prepared to talk about that right now. I need to learn more about it before I can give you XYZ of an answer." And that was before the pandemic. That was like 2019, and that has stuck with me ever since. As something that's, an admirable way of saying, I respect this conversation, I respect your position, and because of those factors, like you said earlier, you care. I want to go back, do my own homework on this so that I'm prepared to help us both move forward.
100%.
Yeah.
Um, I tell people all the time that, you know, it's perfectly okay to say, it's a really good question, and I don't have all the information, but I'd really like to look into it and get back to you.
Yes.
I will say all the time, you know, I know a little bit about this, but I don't want to give you the wrong, I don't want to give you any misinformation. Do you mind if I get the real story and come back to you with that?
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, not for nothing, but if you're a frontline fundraiser, hey, that gives you an opportunity for follow-up.
There you go.
And that makes your follow-up way more engaging than just thanks so much for the call. I hope you'll consider your gift, right? Like now you've got like meat and substance in a next meeting. So like, you know, I don't know. I think it's better to not have all the answers. Like I don't want to walk into a meeting feeling like I know every single thing. Most
Yes.
organizations, there's just no possible way that you could. So
Right.
don't hold yourself to that completely unattainable standard. That's just not fair.
Right. Well, thank you for your
I think people just don't want to look foolish. I think people don't want to look like they don't know
yeah,
what's going on, right? There's this sort of like, I'm supposed to be this credible voice of an organization or an institution. And if I say I don't know, That makes me
Yeah.
look bad. And I would argue, no, it makes you look thoughtful.
Yes.
Makes you look curious, makes you look thorough. So
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that. Can I get back to you on that?
And it also makes you look dependable when you do take the time to find out the full answer and get back to them.
Yeah, you got to do the next part. If you miss the next part, then you're cooked. Yeah, you got to do the follow up. That's you
Right.
can't leave it. You got to go back.
Well, thank you for your response to that quote,
Yeah.
Kate. The next few questions, we get more into your volunteer leadership experience. And
Yes, me and all my copious free time.
so one of your longstanding significant volunteer roles, you have served as, and please correct me if I have my research wrong, the awards co-chair of race operations for the annual Head of the Charles Regatta, which is world famous. And I'm just curious, how did this opportunity come about for you? And as a follow-up, maybe other leadership experiences, managing experiences you have gleaned as a volunteer leader in that capacity that have been new to you outside of your day jobs.
Yeah, so yes, you did get it right. The Head of the Charles Regatta is the largest rowing event in North America, and it is almost entirely volunteer run. So
Wow.
the regatta itself only has a handful of full-time paid staff. The
Okay.
rest of the regatta is managed by a series of sort of expanding circles of volunteers. So
Mm.
there's a volunteer race director, a volunteer race committee that's a small group of folks that meets regularly. I mean, the regatta is the penultimate weekend in October. They've already started meeting about next year's regatta. And then the race operations group is about, I'm going to get the numbers wrong. So
You want to
someone
get
from the
back to me on
regatta
the
will call
numbers?
and someone from the regatta will just call and yell at me later. It's fine. I think we're probably about somewhere between 100 and 125 members of the race operations committee
Whoa.
that head up various sort of subgroups of the regatta. So there's a group that handles all the dock logistics, so literally putting in the docks on the Charles River and taking them out.
Mm.
Um, there's a group that handles literally running the start. So like making sure the electronic timing is working, managing, which boat is in line next and things like that. It's all volunteers, and the committee that I'm part of is the awards committee. We handle the distribution of all the medals and the trophies to folks who made it down the course fast enough to win one. And it's a lot of fun because most of the time people are pretty happy to see you if they're getting something shiny.
Sure.
Like who doesn't like something shiny? Um, so how did I get into it by accident? There's such a theme here, accidents, being asked, and someone you randomly know. So a friend of mine who I just knew in Boston was involved with the regatta and asked me, they were, looking for new people, and she said, "Hey, would you want to do this?" And I had rowed all through high school and all through college
Oh.
and a little bit afterwards, and wasn't rowing at the time, but loved the sport, loved the community, and this was a great way to kind of keep my fingers in it without having to put my butt in a boat at 4 a.m. So great, that worked out really well. And so I stepped on and have stayed with it. I think we did the math, and I think this year was my 15th year with the regatta, which is a little funky because it was a pandemic year when we didn't do one in person.
Mm.
But yeah, so I think if I've learned anything from it, um, you can use volunteers more than you think you can.
Mm.
Your
Right.
volunteers can actually be like staff.
Mm.
They really can. I mean, it's the largest rowing event in North America. There are hundreds of thousands of spectators. There are tens of thousands of athletes who compete. And it's volunteers that are making almost all of that happen. I don't want to detract from the full-time staff. They do amazing work and they have a really hard job. But if you just look at the nuts and bolts of, who's got their hands in it on the execution, it's a lot of volunteer hours and a lot of volunteer bodies.
Yeah.
And, to think of volunteers as people who are sort of incapable of doing the hard stuff, like, no, actually, they can really do the hard stuff. And how the other thing I think that I've learned is that how you treat your volunteers really, really matters.
Yes.
You know, you need to be respectful of people's time. They are not getting paid for this. You are, right? And they're giving, like, think of, especially if you have a paid job and you have a family, the one non-renewable resource is time. And if you're giving up any of it to anyone, you need to be respectful of that. You need to be grateful for it. And you need to also, especially if you have folks that have been with you for a long time and are executing the work at a high level, you really need to trust their expertise and their knowledge. There are folks on the race operations committee that have been doing it longer than I have.
Mm,
I don't know the first thing about what they do on their committees. If you threw me into it, the whole regatta would be in trouble. Like no one wants me doing river control. I promise you. No one wants me doing that. Not going to be good at it. Not a certified U.S. rowing umpire. Don't call me for that. You have to respect, there are people who really know what they're doing.
definitely.
Um, and if you treat your volunteers like staff, like that's not always a bad thing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but you got to respect them. You got to be grateful for them. Like
Yeah.
it's amazing what your volunteers can do if you really kind of give them give them the reins.
Yeah.
It's an amazing, the regatta is amazing. It's such a phenomenal event. It's a crazy 3 days every fall. Um, my daughter calls it the boat race. She comes down to visit every year.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, no offense to Oxford and Cambridge and the actual boat race, but we started explaining to her what it was when she was 3. She had a limited vocabulary. Okay, we're working on it. But she loves it. It's a part of, so many of my incredibly strong friendships come from that regatta.
Wonderful.
I'm grateful every year that I get to be part of it.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I remember the was it the bus stop? Was that the restaurant
Uh-huh.
next to Teal Hall? And I feel like
That amazing diner. Yes.
yes, yeah, diner, yeah. No longer there, right?
Dive
Yeah.
pub. I'm not sure.
But
It's
I
probably
remember like there
condemned,
was
but they had good
some
fries.
oh yes, the fries and the burgers. Holy cow.
100%.
Um, but I remember you talking about it at the bus stop, talking about the regatta at the bus stop, with I don't know if it was like Team A or the entire, Teal Hall operation, and just that you were already being a volunteer with it and encouraging all of us to check it out that weekend. And for some reason, that's stuck in my head all these years later. I don't know why, but
Anyone can volunteer. The website opens for volunteering usually in early September.
hey, all right.
Get in touch. Let me know. Always happy to have new hands.
Man, that's great. Thank you. I wonder, I'm just realizing I put a different question as a follow-up here.
Bounce
Um,
around. I'm here. We're good.
let's bounce around. Because you just talked about the head of the Charles Regatta and your volunteer experiences there. You've mentioned a few times, Kate, your education at Miss Porter's and being a class agent in fundraising with your class. So I wonder if we can go to that question as a natural follow-up, and then get to what is question 4
Sure.
as the final one. So as long as I've known you, it's kind of like Sarah Hall always talking about Kenyon or Josh Merrow talking about Denison.
Yep.
Um, you know, Miss Porter's has been a central piece of your identity. And
Mhm.
I'm really curious how you decided to go there and what aspects of being an alum have been most rewarding for you and have kept you having a very strong tie to it.
Yeah. Um, so how did I end up there? Again, by accident and because of a relationship. Again, there's a theme here. Um,
There is.
I grew up in California in
Oh,
the Bay Area. I grew up in San Jose, and my mom was a public school teacher her entire career. She's retired now, but school and education was important. That was a family value for us, and when it came time for my brother and I to go to high school, the San Jose Unified Public School System was in a little bit of trouble at that point.
oh,
And
okay.
my parents wanted us to have a stronger educational background for high school. And my older brother, ended up attending an amazing Jesuit day boys school called Bellarmine College Preparatory, which is in San Jose, California. Amazing school, incredible academic programs, really phenomenal place. And at that time, the day school options for girls were not as compelling, let's say.
Okay.
And both my parents were from the East Coast originally, so boarding school wasn't a completely foreign concept, though
Ah.
in California at that time it certainly was. When I told people I was going to boarding school, the first question was, "Oh my God, what'd you do?" I think they all thought I was getting sent to military school or something. But we were at a private middle school, and the headmaster of my middle school had gone to Choate Rosemary Hall and then on to Princeton University for college. His wife had gone to Miss Porter's and then on to Radcliffe.
Okay.
And she's an author. She actually wrote a book about it. It's called The New Girls. It's still in print. Highly recommend. She wrote it while she was still a student at Radcliffe.
Whoa.
Fabulous read. A little
Huh.
salacious, but fabulous read. Um, and when we talked about high school, it sort of came up, is boarding school really an option? And, I and all of my eighth grade erudition said, "What, you mean like boarding school?" Because again, nobody did that.
Yeah.
But I went to go look. My mom took me to go look at boarding schools, all girls. Her answer was, "If I'm sending you 3,000 miles away, there's no way you're going to school with boys. Girls' schools only." And there were some schools that there was one school, I'm not going to name it because that's mean, and this is the internet, and the internet's forever. But I wouldn't even get out of the car. I was like, "I'm not going here." Like, we
Wow.
drove to the campus, and I was like, "Absolutely not. This
Okay.
is not happening." And we went to visit in January, which, like, New England in January, this is not fall leaves and
No.
blue skies and green grass and white church steeples. This is gray. Everything's gray.
Yes.
And when I went to visit Miss Porter's, I stayed over in the dorms, and because I'm from California, I washed my hair that morning, and I walked out of this dorm with my hair wet and it froze to my head. Didn't
Ah.
even own snow boots, okay? Like, totally ill prepared. And I fell in love with the place. And it was the only school that I toured where when I sat in class, I didn't already know the answers to all the questions the teachers were asking. Um,
Okay.
the girls were smart and fun and funny, and kind. They were really kind and really welcoming. And then, when I entered the school the next year, some of them were still on campus, and like they became friends.
Oh,
"Hey, I
wonderful.
remember you. You stayed in our dorm when you toured. Hey," like one of them ended up on the
Sweet.
volleyball team with me. Like, um, it was a really transformational educational experience. It changed the way that I view the world. It changed the way that I view other people. I learned a ton, academically, certainly. Still to this day, my probably one of my best teachers ever was a woman named Alice Delena, who taught English and then art history. She taught computer science along the way too at Miss Porter's. She was a central figure in my life.
Mm,
Um, I owe my love of art and art history entirely to her.
beautiful.
Uh, Sorry, she passed away this fall, so it's so
Oh, I'm
fresh. I
sorry.
wasn't planning on talking about Alice. She's amazing. By the time she retired, she taught over half the living alumni of the school.
Oh, wow.
Just had like I think it's fair to say a cult-like following. Um, she's amazing, just the most amazing woman. And
Yeah.
you know, it just hammered home the importance of education and learning and being part of a community, and that became my life, right? And
Yes.
I always felt valued and valuable there.
Mm,
And so staying connected just made sense.
yeah.
I'll never know why in the fall and winter of 97, 98 they decided to call me and ask me to be a class agent. I still think that was a terrible choice. And as I tell my classmates every time we go back for reunion, I will keep doing this until I die, we find someone better, or our class's participation drops, because then one of you guys has to do it. So they all go, "Okay, we'll make our gifts. Just please don't make us do the calls." Which is how I keep my participation high. But it's been incredibly important to me because the place was important to me, and it really created
Sure.
who I became. And so, staying connected and giving back and encouraging everybody to do the same that's kind of a no-brainer for me.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and I mentioned this earlier on, but I've seen how helpful it is for my classmates when they're sort of like, "Hey, I heard this thing." They know they have someone they can call
Right.
and ask. And now I've had some classmates whose daughters have gone through,
Oh, that's sweet.
or are on campus now, and that's been really fun to see. So it's an amazing school. It's a phenomenal community. It's a top-notch education. Um, and it's just a really, really great place. And it's a girls' school, so there are songs. There's always songs at girls' schools.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, girls' schools. Trust me. Don't get me started on the Smith ones. They're in Latin. Um, my daughter knows them and can sing them. Thank you very much. That was my moment where like I knew I had succeeded as a Smithy when my husband was singing lullabies to our daughter. She was like two and a half at the time. And and he was like, okay, well, what song do you want tonight? She goes, Daddy, sing Gaudium Musicator. And he goes, yeah, I don't know that one. That's mommy's song. And she goes, that's okay, Daddy, I do it. And she starts going, Gaudium Musicator, Juvenestum Sumus, because I had sung it to her. Because you have kids, Tim, you know. When you're
Yes,
singing lullabies, you're just grasping for anything you know the words to.
totally. Totally.
She knows Rocky Raccoon. That's a song about a gunfight. It's fine. I know the words to it. It doesn't matter. But she sang Gaudium Musicator, first two verses in full Latin, and I literally like texted all of my friends from Smith and was like, I have won. She can sing Gaudium Musicator. We're done here. My work is done.
The
But the
pinnacle of
last line,
parenthood.
yes, no, like parenting level unlocked. Your kid can sing a 14th century drinking song in Latin. You're winning at life. Parenting medal right here, forthcoming. It's in the mail. But anyway, the last line of the song that we all sing at Farmington, and I've sung it at reunions and people's weddings, and
Hmm.
I'm sure someday people's kids' weddings. The last line of the song is "Farmington's our home," and
Oh, beautiful.
it was my home for 4 years, and it was
Yeah.
incredibly important to me and who I became, and a really phenomenal place. So giving back that's the easy part.
Yes. I'm just so struck, Kate, about
That I
what
can
we
sing in
talk-
Latin, I know you should be.
well, that too.
Kidding.
But just throughout this conversation, you've talked about certain people and places, and those seem to be a real, you know, touchstone for you as a person, as a professional. And it's really nice of you to share those sentiments and
I
make
like to give credit where credit's due.
yeah,
All your life is a series of people and places and how they connect together and make you feel and help you become who you are.
yeah.
And you know, again, if I've gotten anywhere or done anything while, it's because somebody helped me out, held my hand, pulled me along, taught me how.
Totally.
We none of us get through this on our own.
That's for sure.
So
Yes.
you always need somebody to kind of show you how to do it, and hopefully they're giving good advice.
Yeah,
Because
that would be helpful.
I've taken it, so I hope it was good.
Well, now you got me thinking of lullabies too, and my kids, believe me, are way beyond that stage of life. But
I mean, like it. It's like 2 a.m. You are grasping at straws.
yeah.
I like take me out to the ball game. Sure, whatever works.
The wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, sure, whatever.
Hey, Alice's restaurant. I mean, Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire. Take your pick. I could cure cancer with the amount of space in my brain that is currently taken up by song lyrics. The entirety of Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA album.
Wow.
It's all lodged in there. I think at one point, anyway.
Wow.
She's got a vast repertoire.
That's awesome.
My husband was in the army. She can sing the first ID song. She knows the West Point alma mater. She's got a broad repertoire for a 6-year-old.
That'll serve her well in life to have a very varied, wide-ranging exposure to all sorts of songs.
Or it's going to help her on Jeopardy someday. Unclear.
Exactly. And then you can retire.
Exactly.
Hey, for our last question,
Yeah.
I've asked this of several guests over time. I'm always curious if there was a particular moment or a project or an initiative where you have felt at some point in your career that fundraising suits me well. I may not, like you said at the beginning, I may not have planned to become a fundraiser, but the combination of my skills, personality, interests, learning, curiosity, put those all together and to have a specific moment where it's like, this is what I want to do. Do you have anything that comes to mind from any point in your career where you thought, you know what, like, this is where I should be?
Yeah. I'm glad you didn't ask this question of like, gosh, I'm really good at this because I've never had that feeling. Not once. Imposter syndrome, left, right, sideways, and up, down. But
Join the club.
I mean, real talk. But I think, there have been more than a handful of times where a donor or an alum or a volunteer that I've worked with has given me a hug and said thank you.
Awesome.
And I'm like, so we're supposed to be thanking you. You're the one who gave the gift. You're the one who gave your time. You're the one who chaired your committee, whatever. And I think pretty much, anytime I'm at an event and a volunteer gives me a hug, I'm like, yep, I
Mm,
this is a good gig. This is fun.
Lovely.
Um, because it's personal to them.
Yeah.
It's not quite like The Godfather, right? Like personal science. It's not personal, it's business. For us, it's business. For us, it's our work. But especially if you're talking about educational institutions, but I imagine this happens in healthcare too, especially if you're dealing with grateful patient. Like this is personal,
Totally.
to your donors, to your volunteers. And if you treat, human first, treat people as people, have good manners, right? Like you're gonna make their personal experience something that they're happy about and
Yeah.
excited about and grateful for.
Yeah.
Um, so if there's ever a moment where I felt like "Oh, I'm doing some good here,
Yeah.
it's when I've made people happy with the experience they've had.
Mm,
The question of does it suit me is an interesting one because I think there's an expectation or an assumption that a lot of people have that in order to be really good at this work, you have to be a certain kind of person,
mm.
that you have to be really bubbly or really extroverted or really like a people person or, really love cocktail parties. No, you don't. I'm actually a card carrying introvert. I'm not extroverted at all. Cocktail parties scare me. Um,
Uh-uh.
I not my best. And I think if I've learned anything, it's that if you are authentically yourself, that anyone can do this work. There's no such
Mhm.
thing as the right kind of person for professional philanthropic efforts.
Sure.
Um, find a role that works for you that allows you to be your authentic self. And there are lots of different ways to do that. But the idea that only one kind of person can be good at this job, I think is a real mistake that some people make.
Yeah.
Um, oh, you're a fundraiser, you must be XYZ.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I can point to bunches of colleagues, past, present, and future, probably, that are the exception that proves that rule that you've made for yourself.
Yeah.
I think anyone can be good at this job if they care about it.
Hmm.
And if they can find a way to be authentic and care about the place that you're fundraising for, I think anybody can be good at this.
Yeah.
So I think it's back to sort of the beginning of where we started. Like I don't think anybody grows up going, I'm going to be a fundraiser when I grow up. Um, but I don't think there's some sort of idea that this profession is only open to certain kinds of people. I think that's a real misnomer and a real misalignment of reality. Because I actually think anybody can be good at this work if they want to be.
I agree with you. And it took me into probably my 20th year in fundraising before I myself dislodged that assumption from my brain. Not that I knew I didn't want to be a frontline fundraiser. I like to sleep at night pretty well, and having having some control over what I do day to day. And if you're a fundraiser, you know when to ask for a gift or when to recruit someone for committees. But that's where your control ends because then you wait for their answer, and their answer is tied ultimately to your metrics. And and I didn't want that. The travel wouldn't be such a bad thing, at least when I was younger. But I did feel like, oh, I would look around the hall and I'd be like, yeah, they're all outgoing, super chatty, energetic. They can talk to anyone. And I was totally an introvert. Um, don't think it's quite true anymore, but just felt like, oh, if I go to an all staff meeting or the HBS holiday party, I'm gonna find my two or three people that I probably work with anyway, and just latch on to them because I'm not like the great majority of people on the fourth floor of Teal Hall at that time. So yeah, I
Tim,
like.
I always found you chatty and personable and delightful. You were one of my favorite conversation partners when we worked together. So
Well, thank you.
I think this idea that you are not a people person, I think that's a misconception, sir.
Thank you. And I think it's imposter syndrome that as you've talked
Yes.
about as well. I think like I mean, yeah, I just felt like what could I contribute to a conversation, with you know different groups of people. Um that
But I learned so much from you, Tim, because I
did
would
you?
come back from trips when I first became a frontline officer. I would come back from trips and sit in your office, probably just annoyed the heck out of you. But I
Mhm.
would like walk through my itinerary and talk you through the people that I had seen and what I'd learned. And what you gave me in return in terms of like, well, wait, did he say this or did he say that? And
Mm,
the education that I got about prospect research and prospect management and what questions to ask and like how to follow up and what does this mean versus that mean when somebody's talking about their work, you knew so much. And those conversations after those trips trained me how to be a better frontline fundraiser and ask better questions and know what to look for and what to listen for and what to ask about. You taught me so much.
wow.
So don't sell yourself short. And I never found you to be introverted because if you were, you would have kicked my butt out of your office and not let me do that to you. And I learned a ton from those conversations, by just talking to you and hearing the questions that you asked as follow up and what you taught me. So
Hmm.
don't sell yourself short.
Well, thank you. I am very touched by your compliments. And I remember sitting in my little office next to Team A and had a little table. And I think you were one of the few that actually would do that trip debrief. And I just found you to be so inquisitive and genuine in and very process oriented, but with a human touch of connecting with the donors, connecting with prospects, and then being the same way when you come back to the office. And just that warmth, that inquisitiveness, and the sincerity um, made you be one of my favorite coworkers over the almost 20 years I worked in that building. So
Well, you've had a lot of great coworkers. I'm just honored to be on the list.
I'm honored to know you, and I'm honored to have you as a guest today. I was so looking forward to talking with you because it's been a number of years.
You're like, I was so looking forward to talking to you. And now that we've done it, not so sure anymore.
Don't sell yourself short, Kate. Just what you told me.
No, this was really fun. Thanks for the invitation. It's deeply flattering, but also I think there's a lot about this profession that's really interesting and can be really incredibly important and can really move the needle for a lot of organizations that are doing incredibly important work. And I think if people have this idea in their heads that there's only one kind of person that can do this work or one kind of experience that this work entails, I think that's really shortchanging the industry and shortchanging nonprofit organizations. Um, Mission-driven organizations make such a difference in communities, and they need good people. And I don't think anyone should sort of take themselves out of the running just because of a perception. So, the more people that can volunteer and give their time, and the more people that can give their experience and their expertise as volunteers, as professionals, I think the better off the entire field could be. So, I'm a big fan of not having people sort of take themselves out of the organization before they even start.
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I think for me, that's one of the things I hope this podcast can do is to have people who are in the trenches dispel misconceptions and advocate for our profession. And you did that really well just now and at other points today. And I just feel that there'll be people in our audience when they see your interview go live that will be really beneficial for them to learn or to hear it from a different voice. Maybe they may think that, but to hear it from you may be really a crystallizing moment. So thank you for sharing all of that, Kate.
No, you're welcome. And I'm flattered, but this was fun too. I just like getting a chance to catch up with you. So
Totally.
completely selfishly, I had a blast.
I did too. It was great. So thank you so much for your time today, Kate. And I get to Boston once a year, thereabouts, to visit my parents. So I'd love to just connect in person next time I'm there and let you know when that may
Call me
be.
up.
Yeah.
Take you out for a cannoli. We'll have a good time.
That sounds good. And for our audience, thank you. This is the last conversation of 2025. You'll be able to find Kate's interview once it goes live on various platforms, LinkedIn with a link to the audio video for YouTube, as well as a link for Podbean and Spotify for those who like to listen to the interviews. And then thanks to my 100th guest, Luis Diaz of WISE and the Donor Participation Project for his sponsorship of my website. Kate Osterman's interview will be there as well, peopleinfundraising.wordifysites.com. Thank you all for your support. And Kate, thanks and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Tim. Happy holidays.
Same to you.